Kitco Mining special coverage of the Mining Investment Event of the North is brought to you by EMX Royalty Corp.
Gold has hit several all-time highs, and Bitcoin is up 160% in the past year. Our next guest is the best at straddling both the precious metal and crypto worlds. Frank is CEO and Chief Investment Officer at U.S. Global Investors. Frank, welcome back to Kitco.
Hey, it's great to be with Michael. Long time no talk. Thanks for the love.
Frank, is it a coincidence that gold and Bitcoin went up together, or are both assets being pushed up by similar market forces?
I think they're being pushed up by very similar market forces. I think there's a huge concentration of Americans, because I used to have the first Eastern European fund in America, and it was nothing but attrition when we saw Putin invade Ukraine. We saw that the global ramifications was the electricity prices went up one penny to 2 pennies per kilowatt, even though they were not invaded. It's just the emotional sentiment, and speculation said, I'm going to come back to North America. I don't want to be in Asia. I don't want to be in Eastern Europe. So if you look at macro fund flows, you can see this sort of shift in asset flows. And then when we come to these alternative asset classes, we see the adoption of the Bitcoin ETFs, and they've garnered incredible asset flows. But gold as a currency, it's also making all-time highs. What's really important, Michael, it's not just in dollars. It's not just a negative story. Dollars down, gold is up. Trash talk on the U.S. dollar. No, dollar is up, and gold is up, and Bitcoin is up. So something else, and NVIDIA is leading the charge. Something else significant is happening.
Now, in a tweet, you called gold Bitcoin's analog cousin. What role do you see gold in relation to Bitcoin in the years out?
I think that the big attraction to Bitcoin that's so competitive to the price of gold is supply is restricted. You have many more of the crypto mining companies, they actually own Bitcoin, like Hive does. We hold our position. We made a press release yesterday. We increased it by 4% month over month. It used to be back in the 90s that there were several gold mine producers that hodled their gold. That is, hold on for dear life. Deal with the volatility and put it on your balance sheet if you really believe it. I Am Gold, Rob McEwen, when he had Gold Corp, they all had a strong gold position, and those stocks all traded at a higher price to book value. And they sold it because they wanted to expand, and then you saw the book value of those companies over time shrink. So I think gold miners, like Bitcoin miners, have to show investors their conviction that they really like the product, that they're going to own it.
Well, you expand on that, Frank, on that conviction, because, that has been what's been remarkable about this rise with the precious metals is that, we've seen a rise with the mining equities, but we really certainly haven't seen the rise that you would actually expect given these all-time highs for gold.
Well, it's a good question, and what to realize is this operative word called free cash flow. And free cash flow is very, very key in the S&P 500. You can see if you just buy those with the highest 50 stocks, that is the top 10% or 500 stocks of free cash flow yields, they outperform. And those gold stocks, they went down to, I did a 15-year study trying to just own 20 having high free cash flow yield. And there were periods when I couldn't get 8 of them. And out of the universe of 8 at that time was 90 gold producers. Today, I think my universe after merger is about 85 global gold producers. And out of the 85, maybe 40 have a free cash flow yield. So what does that mean to your listener? Free cash flow gives management the ability to expand operations, to grow, pay dividends, or buy back stock, or pay down debt. That's the significance of having a free cash flow. And what we've done is we've looked at those, just the 10 best gold stocks with the highest free cash flow yield. They far outperformed. But you can't create an ETF or a mutual fund that only has 10 names. In America, you have to have 21 names in a universe of gold stocks. So it's interesting that our ETF has outperformed the GDX and GDXJ because it does focus on metrics like that. If you want to get a big bid, you'll have to turn around and really show the free cash flow yield, and you'll get quant funds coming in to buy. So when you look at the Ray Dalios or Renaissance Technology, they end up showing that they buy royalty companies. When Paul Singer from Elliott Management, who's now famous going after Southwest Airlines, likes to shake up management, well, he also launched a huge gold royalty company we were talking about earlier, Triple Flags. And we were on the ground floor of the launching of Triple Flags, like we were on Sober Wheaton and Franco-Nevada. And so we understand that model. Well, guess what? Royalty companies statistically outperform gold stocks because they usually have a free cash flow yield, and that attracts the non-gold investor. The quant looks for free cash flow yields.
Macro question for you, Frank, and this is talking again about some of those outperformers that you mentioned in your fund. When I'm talking to people about this market and people that are still looking for love, especially around the developer and the junior sector of this side in the gold space, they're really hanging their hats on Q2, because that's when they say you're going to see all of this cash show up on the balance sheets, show up in the financials for the gold companies. But macro question, how are we looking in terms of inflation right now? Do you feel comfortable that some of these gold miners are going to be able to contain costs, see this big upside, or do you think that it could be a mixed bag into Q2?
I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I think that rates will come down, gold will go up, but not all the gold stocks will get that same fund flow action. There's been lots of things that have happened. 2 years ago, there were regulations came out in the U.S. that was really weird for me for the regulations because it had to do with the 2008 banking crisis and banks having illiquid bonds. And all of a sudden that got extrapolated into the world of equities. And that is the 15% of your fund deemed illiquid. So what means illiquid is that if they don't trade enough volume or the spread between the bid and ask is too wide. Well, if you have a stock, it even trades 1 million shares a day in Toronto and it's bid 10 cents, offered 11, that spread of 10% is deemed, it makes it that it's all of a sudden deemed illiquid, even though it trades 1 million shares a day. So you saw over the past couple of years a disinvestment by funds because the boards of trustees become so afraid of the regulatory pronouncements of the SEC will come after them. So they say, we just don't want to deal with that. We're out. So you've seen this continuous selling. You've now, on the other hand, you've seen a very smaller group of CEOs that recognize the operative word is called price discovery, and that you need to have minnows to attract whales. And you need to have, it's not stock promotions, but branding your story and why you're a great speculation. And so that's one factor that we look at. And we look at now, if we're going to invest in you, Michael, with the junior mining space, we're going to look at your LinkedIn page. We're going to see what is your depth and breadth. That is, how many buy side and sell side analysts do you really know? How often have you been on Kitco and things of that nature, because that's what drives price discovery. And so there's another dimension of the analysis. So I speak to so many CEOs, big gold producers. They don't have a Twitter page. They don't follow. They have someone else do it. They don't have a Reddit. Well, Reddit has a huge ecosystem of crypto, and they have all these kids that produce art and memes about crypto. You don't have that just chitter chatter in the gold space, in the exploration space, where people do it free for creating memes. So that will be something if you're going to bring in the younger investor. Not my vintage. I'm late baby boomer now. It's bringing in young guys like you and younger that are going down to the 25 years old. Well, they'd rather go speculate on some new biotech or crypto stock or crypto token in their psychology. Because if you're dealing also with demographics that we have to recognize.
Frank, that's kind of why, we love having you on because your ability to straddle both worlds as well. There's a real difference between the stories that the miners are telling right now as opposed to the stories that crypto's being able to tell in terms of being able to get interest in their sector.
Absolutely. The onboarding and the offboarding is much faster and easier. Even with all the regulations, it's still easier for them, and it attracted young people. I had a paper route. No one ever thinks there's no such thing as a paper route in today's world. And that's how I made money. Well, these kids mine Ethereum. Now that went away, so they go mining other tokens with their GPU chips because their GPU chips allow them to do gaming. So they've taken their gaming chips, which they have fun with, and they make money. And if they're making an extra couple $1,000s a year, they upgrade their computer system. This is a new world. So they know about speculation and what's happened in particular in Canada, which is 80% of mining in the world. Well, it's controlled by 5 banks. They always like to talk about oligarchs. Well, the 5 banks in Canada function like oligarchs, and they control the whole regulatory regime. So what's happened is that it's okay to go to the casino. It's okay to buy a lottery ticket. That's fine to speculate. But you can't go buy a junior mining stock if you are over 65 years old because that's just too risky. And that's what's happened. So that younger person says, well, I can go and speculate somewhere else. And you've seen this change. Now you've had another big macro factor that is the climate change fanatics. And the climate change fanatics is very different about clean air and clean water, which I'm a big supporter of, and pollution. It's the climate change fanatics that basically anything with mining is evil. And so over time, you see that Canada's pensions versus Australia come up with a policy that they don't have to invest in mining or oil and gas, and they start going abroad. And all of a sudden today in Canada, there's more money invested in China, private equity deals, than there is in resources of any form in Canada. So you have these policies that direct the flow of funds. I always write in my prospectuses that government policies are a precursor to change. So what are we having today in the world that's making these all-time highs? We have this fear, and rightfully so, of what Putin and Xi are doing, and particularly what Putin is doing in Ukraine and what Putin is doing in West Africa, the disruptions he's creating in West Africa, which is impacting France, which is affecting gold and oil and gas. So all these things start to have this sort of concern of a rebuilding of armaments. And we're seeing that a lot of the weapons from America that went to Ukraine, it's old technology. It's like me giving you my old cassette. So you're having in every state where there's Congress in every state in America, they're rebuilding America. It's happening just right now. And the boom in GPU chips is going into medical, healthcare, military-wise. It's going into cybersecurity. It's going into drones. It's just recognizing that you see this in Poland. Poland's afraid of surrounding Ukraine and Russia, what it's going to do. And all of a sudden, their spend as a percentage of GDP is higher than what's required. Greece never spent money, and ever since they were basically invaded by illegals coming across in the fear in Syria, they're now, if you take a look at their GDP and the spend on security has gone through the roof. So what's happening globally with AI and chips, etc., is this, and it will continue, this big spend on cybersecurity and protection for people to feel safe. And so that means money printing. Where are they going to get this money to feel safe? Well, they're going to print lots of money, and they're going to turn around and devalue their fiat currency, and gold starts to climb, gold along with the dollar, because the dollar is actually doing exceptionally well with a high yield relative to Europe or Canada, so it's doing exceptionally well. They bring in a climate change fanatic as a new leader in Mexico, and I know it's this unbalanced policies they have. When I talk about this, it's a fanaticism. And so immediately the currency falls. Well, I didn't make it fall. It's the wisdom of crowds. Mr. Market, Mrs. Market out there said that is deemed a high risk. Now, if they said they're going to spend lots of money on security and protection against narcos, that currency probably would have gone up. And so you're recognizing what we're having globally is this huge money printing for national security in these countries, and that makes Bitcoin more valuable, that makes gold more valuable. But Bitcoin is capped at 21 million coins. Gold is not. They're still producing over 100 million ounces of new gold a year. And so if you had all of a sudden 20% of that production going onto the balance sheets of gold producers that have free cash flow, I think you see gold at 5,000.
Help us out on the macro front, Frank. And what do you see with the Fed and cutting interest rates?
It's a challenge when they have payrolls so strong and all the negative news on credit debt and home debt. You have to expect the unexpected in an election year. What's really profound on the macro picture this year is 70% of the world has gone and will go to the election polls. India just went, changed there, Europe. So what's 70% mean? It means 5 billion people. That's how many people are going to go out to have a change in government, and there'll be all these promises. So in a year when there's 70% of the world is making promises, expect money printing. And the money printing is not today about welfare payments. It's all about national security. So it does change the flow of capital. And I do think the significance of NVIDIA is like the invention of electricity. It will change many industries in the next 4 years. And that's why NVIDIA has gone to the all-time high that it has. And I think coming back into gold, that the free cash flow yield stocks, they will get a higher bid. They will start to see that. And then we'll start to see bigger acquisitions to replace those reserves on the balance sheet. I think there'll be smarter M&A work, especially in the small cap space. Mid caps will buy the small caps, big caps will buy the mid caps.
Frank, just to finish, copper versus gold. Looking at your conversation that we've had right now, it seems that they're both being driven by policy or both policy missteps. It's the one thing I don't understand, because it seems like you could be bullish on copper, be bullish on gold, but I can never quite understand how you can be actually bullish on both, because one seems to be a bet on the economy doing well, and the other being a bet on the economy not doing well.
Well, that's the fear trade. The fear trade for gold is 40% is actually fear. 60% is love. You have to always remember that. Jewelry demand, gift-giving demand is more highly correlated to rising GDP per capita. So what countries are experiencing the fastest growth in GDP per capita? Those nations predominantly are in Asia. And those nations have a cultural affinity towards gold. So you've got to put that. Now, when we talk about the fear, copper is and gold, I'd say look at copper gold porphyry deposits. That's why you see Mark Bristow pivoting. You see Newmont make acquisitions. You see Freeport-McMoRan having a copper gold porphyry deposits doing so well. I think in the mining space in Canada, I think it's going to become more valuable in the ground is these copper gold porphyry deposits that are in Canada. If there's anything that blows up in China versus Taiwan, I don't think it'll happen. But if something was, then all these deposits get a reset button. And same thing in Europe.
Frank, thanks for your time.
Well, thank you. And remember, you got to stay positive, and that way you can see the opportunities.
My name is Michael McRae here at the Mining Investment Event of the North for Kitco Mining.
Kitco Mining special coverage of the Mining Investment Event of the North is brought to you by EMX Royalty Corp.